Hi, my name is Sheila Corona. Welcome to Sassy Seer Sheila and or New Light Streaming Love. This will be seen on both channels, and I highly recommend that you be subscribed in both places if you are not already, as you never know what's going to come out on which channel and whether or not, just never know what's going to happen, right? This is key 32, Divine Signature. // divine underscore signature colon activate open bracket vessel colon total underscore self close bracket by Jason Gray. And the original transmission date on this piece was 2025, June 8th. And of course, as with all the other pieces, in the keys series, there is codes and to include what's that kind of code again? It's symbolic. There's also binary. That's what it is. Binary code here. It includes a bunch of other kind of information, transmission coordinates, and what all. These were things that he was nudged to include with these writings. And I highly recommend that you allow your eyes, if you're drawn to it, to move over these codes yourself. There comes a point in the sequence where nothing more is being assembled. Nothing more is being repaired. Nothing more is being searched for, reached toward, or uncovered through effort. The movement that defined everything before this stage begins to fall away, not because growth stops, but because the structure that required growth as a process of becoming is no longer dominant. What remains is not expansion through addition. It is stabilization through total integration. For most of your life, you existed in layers that did not fully communicate with one another. Thought moved in one direction, emotion in another, action in another. Knowing appeared in flashes, but did not always translate into embodiment. You could see clearly in one moment and still act from distortion in the next. You could understand truth and still hesitate to live it. You could feel alignment and still lose it under pressure. This fragmentation was not failure. It was it was the condition of partial activation. Different systems coming online at different times under different triggers through different thresholds of readiness. You called it growth. You called it healing. You called it awakening, but underneath all those names, something far more precise was occurring. You were being brought back into operational coherence, not built, not upgraded, restored. Every key that came before this one did not give you something new. It removed interference from something already present. It cleared distortion from functions that were always available, but not yet fully accessible. It stabilized aspects of self that had been split, suppressed, or misaligned. Slowly, layer by layer, system by system, you came back online. Not all at once, not perfectly, but progressively until eventually there are no active systems left. Divine / divine underscore signature : activate open bracket vessel : total underscore self close bracket. This line does not initiate something new. It confirms that nothing remains offline. Activation here is not the beginning of a process. It is the completion of one. The term, quote, divine signature has been misunderstood across countless systems. It has been reduced to symbol, mark, blessing, or external recognition. But the signature is not something placed upon you. It is not given, not bestowed, not granted by authority outside of your own structure. It is what emerges when there is no contradiction left within you. When every layer of your being expresses the same signal without distortion. It is the moment where what you know, what you feel, what you do, and what you are cease to diverge. There is no longer a gap between awareness and embodiment, no delay between recognition and action, no fracture between truth and expression. The signature is coherence made total. Before this, there were still internal negotiations, moments where clarity existed, but action hesitated, moments where truth was known, but softened to maintain comfort, belonging, or safety. Moments where the body resisted what the mind understood. Moments where emotion overrode what presence revealed. These were not mistakes. They were signs of incomplete integration. Now, those negotiations end, not because you force them to end, but because there is no longer any internal structure generating opposition. The systems that once contradicted each other are no longer operating independently. They are unified. You are no longer managing yourself. You are functioning as a single coherent system. To say, quote, fully operational is not to say flawless. It is to say undivided. There is no part of you working against another part. There is no hidden resistance, no suppressed contradiction, no internal sabotage, no delayed alignment. And I would like to just stop a moment and take note of the fact that as I was reading those words just now, it was as though I had, and I don't even know how to really put it to words. Okay, I'm being shown I felt something physically in my body. And I'm being shown, I don't know if it's a merging of two of what has been called chakras or something, because I don't know. I don't know how to explain it, but I'm having a physical reaction or integration, maybe even, as I'm reading these words. So I'm going to back up a minute again, for a moment here and reread. To say, quote, fully operational is not to say flawless. It is to say undivided. There is no part of you working against another part. There is no hidden resistance. I've been concerned about that for myself. No suppressed contradiction. No internal sabotage. No delayed alignment. Everything that arises within you now moves through a unified channel. I wonder if that's why I felt that physically, so that I would really get that line. Everything that arises within you now moves through a unified channel. Perception, interpretation, response, and expression are no longer fragmented processes. They are one movement, continuous, unbroken. This changes everything about how you exist. Energy no longer spikes and crashes in reaction to circumstance. It stabilizes into flow, not forced, not maintained through discipline, simply unobstructed. The body no longer carries tension as a default because tension was the result of internal conflict. With that conflict gone, the body reorganizes around ease, not laziness, not collapse, ease as efficiency. Energy moves where it needs to move without resistance. Breath deepens without instruction. Boy, I'm sure hoping that's the case, because I actually feel a lot better. It's just we've had some wildfires around here, and so it was causing me a little issue, but I do feel like I'm breathing much deeper, if that makes any sense. Breath deepens without instruction. Posture aligns without effort. The system stops bracing against itself. Presence becomes constant, not something you enter and exit, not something you lose and regain. It is no longer a state. It is your baseline condition. There is no need to, quote, return to presence because you are no longer leaving it. What once required attention to maintain now requires nothing to sustain. Seeking ends here, not suppressed, not denied, rendered obsolete. I find that sort of true. I'm not, at any rate, maybe that's something for a conversation. Um, Seeking was driven by the assumption that something essential was missing. that truth existed outside your current state. I think that's so. That that completion required movement towards something not yet integrated, and now that assumption dissolves. Like I said, I do feel what he's saying here, and I have to agree because just in a noticing that has arisen within my own self, there's been no, I don't even know how to put it into words, but I do recognize what he's saying here as something that has just arisen for me. That's very interesting. Um, that truth existed outside your current state, that completion required movement towards something not yet integrated, and now that assumption dissolves. There is nothing left outside of you holding authority over what you are. There is nothing left to retrieve, nothing left to unlock, nothing left to activate because activation has already occurred fully. Well, I suspect that I'm not totally aligned as yet. Okay, so I wouldn't say that was true for me personally. However, I know I'm on my way. This is where many expect a dramatic shift, a sense of overwhelming power, a constant intensity, a visible transformation. But the reality is far quieter, more stable, more exact. It feels like nothing is happening because nothing is missing. And for a system that was conditioned to operate through lack, that can feel unfamiliar at first, but over time it becomes unmistakable. Yes, because I kept thinking I wasn't doing anything. There is no pull outward, no need to prove, no need to perform, no need to demonstrate alignment for to others or to yourself. Performance collapses completely because performance only exists where there is a perceived gap between what you are and what you are trying to present. That gap is gone. The field responds to this in ways that are subtle yet undeniable. Coherence reorganizes environment, not through force, through presence. You become a point of stability, not because you intend to be, but because there is no instability left within you to project outward. Others feel this, sometimes as ease, sometimes as discomfort, sometimes as recognition they cannot explain, sometimes as resistance they cannot justify, but something in them detects the absence of fragmentation, and that absence changes the geometry of interaction. You do not need to do anything to cause this. That's true. It is a natural consequence of alignment. There is also a deeper responsibility that emerges here, not imposed, not demanded, inherent, because nothing within you is divided. Everything you express carries weight. Your words are no longer separate from your state. Your actions are no longer separate from your knowing. Your presence is no longer separate from your effect. There is no longer a place to hide within yourself. Well, that's kind of true. And when folks are not used to that, again, it can be unsettling. Wow. Everything you are is active at all times. This is what it means to be fully operational, not constantly doing, constantly aligned. Final inversion becomes clear. You thought activation would feel like gaining something, more clarity, more energy, more awareness, more ability, more access. But what actually occurs is the removal of everything that created the illusion of lack. Nothing is added. Everything unnecessary is gone. What remains is what was always there, unobstructed. You no longer identify as someone becoming. Well, that to me is clear enough that I have not arrived as yet. I feel as though I am still becoming at these moments of now. And I wish to say to anyone else who feels that way too, it's okay because you are becoming. At least it is for me, and everyone gets to feel into that for themselves. Uh, you no longer organize your life around progress toward a future state. You exist as completion in motion. Well, that's true. Because I am always as complete as I am in every given moment. It doesn't mean I'm going to stop being as complete. It's just I feel, and maybe that's a fallacy that I have, that I'm not complete, but I don't know. You exist as completion in motion, not static, not finished in a rigid sense, but complete in every moment. Nothing required to validate it. Well, I feel that's true. Nothing required to sustain it. Nothing required to improve it. Only expression. All systems are now online. You are fully operational. // divine_signature : activate open bracket vessel : total_self close bracket. There is nothing left to activate, only to live as what has always been active beneath the noise. And then again, there's quite a bit of symbols, code that I highly recommend that you spend some time with, allowing your eyes to go over it, read it, because actually I do feel with all of me that there is a portion of me that can read exactly what I'm looking at here. I certainly can read the words, but it's the symbology that I'm not quite sure of their labels. So rather than label them incorrectly, I simply allow my brain to take them in, which is why I recommend that if you are drawn to these writings, that you do the same. Well, that's it for this one. And I believe there is one more key to this series. And I'm hoping to get to it today. We'll see if that happens. I can't tell you how appreciative of all of you that have interacted with me over the years on these channels of mine. And I want to put this out there again. If you feel drawn to me, don't hold yourself back. You can send me an email at consciousconversationcentral@gmail.com, and we can meet in Zoom and explore what that is. Until we meet again, my friends, be well.